Welcome to REST, which stands for Resiliency and Empowerment Seminar today. I am your host, Susan Gans, and I am the founder and business strategist with Gans Strategic Solutions, where we operate at the intersection of business and human behavior. For more information about Gans Strategic Solutions, you can go to www.gansstrategicsolutions.com. This show is about hearing from leaders of small, mid-sized businesses as well as nonprofits. We hear about their professional journeys, their organizations, and very importantly these days, about how they're being resilient. I'm so delighted today to have a colleague of mine from the M&A Network and from the Trusted Advisors Network, Garrett Lang. Garrett began his career as a developer and computer science major from Cornell University, but transitioned into product management with General Electric in 2001. He has extensive experience in the financial services and advertising technology and marketing technology industries. He has managed teams of over 50 people and budgets of over 30 million at small, mid-sized, and large companies, including PricewaterhouseCoopers and Google. More recently, Garrett has started an award-winning food tech company called PlateRate and a software development company called My Development Mavens. With that, welcome to the show, Garrett.
Thank you very much, Susan.
You're welcome. So let's get started. Take us back to the earlier days of your career, the software development, computer science, and share with us your journey.
Sure. So you're going back. I'll start with my beginning of product management with General Electric. I joined their IT leadership course, which was kind of like a CIO grooming course.
Wow.
And it was a great program where you switch jobs every 6 months. If you think about it, the time that you learn the most on a job is the first 6 months. And so their theory was, and it worked really well, if you switch jobs every 6 months, you're going to be going up the learning curve. And I recruited for the program years after I went through it. And what I used to say is you get 5 years of experience in 2 years because
Fantastic.
you're learning so much so quickly, and you go into completely different roles, work with different types of technology, different types of leadership skills. And so, it was a great program where I learned a ton of information and used a wide variety of technologies, each rotation focusing on different ones.
That's amazing, because I'm sure that exposure to those different areas gave you good grounding for what you're doing today. So take us
Absolutely.
to that transition of how you decided to become an entrepreneur and launch two companies.
Sure. So, I've wanted to be an entrepreneur since, I was a child, to be honest. My mom even sent me a letter that I wrote to my grandparents. I unfortunately lost my last grandparent recently.
Um,
And I wrote to them saying how I wanted to start my own business when I was in middle school. And so she showed that letter to me, and I had forgotten that I even wrote it. But they apparently saved it, and it's been something that, I was selling gobstoppers for a quarter on the playground when I was in middle school. So I was kind of an entrepreneur then. I had a really good profit margin for my gobstoppers because it only cost me 50 cents to buy a big packet of those things. So, yeah, I always wanted to start my own company, but I wanted to feel like I was ready. And so, I got finance experience at GE. I learned business strategy at GE. I really learned how to run a company working for small to mid-sized companies. I learned how to run a company very profitably by improving market share's profitability by, basically almost more than doubling their operating margin in less than 8 months. And so by the time, I was in my mid 30s, I was telling my wife, I thought of that idea, I thought of that idea, I thought of that idea. And they were all billion-dollar companies. And my wife's like, look, if you have all these ideas and they're so good, why don't you start your own company? And so really it was my wife's push that got me to say, look, I should take the jump and start my own company. I did it on my nights and weekends for a couple of years. And I just said, look, I'm not going to get traction. And I read a lot of stories about entrepreneurs, and they all said that they had to be full-time to get traction. And it really has been true. I've made much more progress since going full time. It's also a much bigger investment, but I think it'll pay off in the long run. And it's gone much better since doing that.
That is amazing that your wife was your support system. That's so important for entrepreneurs. So let's talk more about the support system. So your wife, and who else has been part of your, let's call it your informal board of directors and your support system to help you in launching?
So my biggest support, unfortunately, I also lost. I've had a lot of loss of three people in the last year and a half. And my stepmother was my career coach pretty much my entire life. And I lost her earlier this year to a battle with cancer. But she, really helped me a lot in, as a career coach and support. Since founding the company, I've been lucky enough to find a number of people. David Manner is my sales coach and has helped me with sales from very early on in the company. More recently, I think I've been working with Kamal, who's a restaurant owner, and kind of leading up my sales team for a little over a year. And he's a great guy and knows the restaurant industry inside and out. And so that gives me a lot more insight into the perspective of a restaurateur. And then my COO, Priya, has been amazing since she's come on board. Gosh, I don't know how long it's been, but probably 6 to 9 months that she's been with me. So those are kind of some of the key players at PlateRate. My development Mavens is a much newer company. But I leveraged the Priya on my development Mavens as well as with PlateRate.
Again, being surrounded by those people who are experts in their relative, call it verticals, and bringing them all together to accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish. So what would you say has been the biggest adjustment for you going from corporate worlds and very structured to going to being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would say you kind of almost alluded to it, which is, going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't have experience, selling my own products. I didn't have experience doing marketing. I've been lucky enough to have, Priya knows social media marketing well. I met a marketer with 25 years of marketing experience. David has, more than that in sales experience. And Kamal knows the restaurant industry. So I've surrounded myself with people who know the things that I don't know better than me. And I've also learned those fields because part of what I learned to do at Cornell and then later with GE is to learn new things very quickly. And, if you're in a job for 6 months and you have to have an impact in those 6 months, you also have to learn a new industry and a new technology. You figure out how to learn stuff very quickly out of necessity. So I've been lucky enough to learn very quickly from people who are experts in those fields. Building software is something I've done for 25 years now, about 25 years. So, that part was, not easy, but it was the part that I already had the expertise in. So I surrounded myself with people and attracted people who would complement my skill set and learn as much as I could from them. Still learning from them.
I think we're always learning, because I was going to say
we should be. It was funny, like a little digression. There was a CIO at GE that, in this leadership program, we got a lot of exposure.
Yes.
And so we had a meeting with a CIO of G Capital, which was half of GE company, many billions of dollars in profit a year. And one of the people in the program asked him, what he needs to learn. And he goes, I don't think I need to learn much of anything. I think I know everything I need to know. And that was such a weird question, like a weird answer for a G leader. And the guy was out within 6 months, which didn't surprise me because G is the opposite of that. It was always about, you were always learning and we're constantly learning. And, most of the G leadership had that mentality. And so it didn't surprise me when he was ousted, 6 months later.
So that's what I get from your story, is really to always be learning and also be on the lookout for people who have complementary skills to yours in building your company to be strong and to thrive.
Definitely think that's important. Like if you have weak points, you need to have people that are strong in those areas to help you out. So yeah, I would agree with all of that. And I would also say that, having integrity, listening to people, and listening to everybody's opinion is really important too. That's a key part of, what I think makes PlateRate different from other companies is giving everybody a voice and allowing everyone to express their opinions. We're not a top-down leadership style. We're, an open-minded egalitarian. Everybody can give their opinions, and then usually, like 95% of the time, there's a consensus on what's the right thing to do. Once everybody has said, "This is what I think, and this is why I, recommend this solution, and why I don't recommend this other solution," we almost always come to consensus. And it's kind of the opposite of the typical leadership style that I'm used to from the companies that I worked with, which is, we don't have time to talk about that, so I'm just going to make the decision. This is the decision. You're all going to like it, and anyone who doesn't like it is creating an insurrection, and they're going to go away. And so you're all going to like my decision, whether it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. And I'm saying some of the things that were unsaid in those decisions, but I have very much the opposite mentality, where I want everybody to have a voice and be able to express their opinions. And I think doing that, it creates a much more inclusive environment. So.
I was just going to say, it seems like diversity and inclusion is one of your core values, and incorporating those various voices. So one of the things that comes out of diversity and inclusion is innovation. And would you say that's true?
Yeah, I would agree completely. Because if all the ideas have to come from me, we're limited by the ideas that I can come up with. And I have a lot of ideas, don't get me wrong, but the whole team has more ideas than I do. And so by listening to everybody's ideas, and in certain areas, they have better ideas than me. And so I should be going with the best idea for the health of the company, and all of our long-term interest is making the company successful. So you just have to put ego aside and say, look, we have to go with the best idea, not with the idea that comes from the top, and create an environment where everyone's comfortable sharing their ideas, and then allow the best ideas to rise to the top, no matter where they come from. I've had developers recommend UX things, junior developers in an offshore country recommend UX things that were good ideas, and we implemented. They've also done some things that were bad ideas, and we fixed those things, and that's okay. My job is more to be a filter rather than the only idea generator in the company. I'm trying to use judgment and sort of create consensus and create a sense of clarity on what is the right path forward, more than being the decision maker all the time.
That brings me to a question of, where does this value around inclusivity come from? Because it doesn't sound like it was necessarily modeled in your prior organizations.
No, I mean, like, what I did when I created the PlateRate culture is I took all the things that I liked about the prior organizations I'd been with, and there were a lot of things that I liked, especially about GE when it was, Jack Welch's GE. Jack Welch was a no-nonsense, like, facts-based guy. When Jeff Immelt took over, I was at that point promoted, working for a CIO of a $255 million net income business. And I started to see the politics from Jeff Immelt come down, and I didn't like it. And that's part of why I parted ways with GE. So, and history has proven me right. People said I was crazy to question the CEO of GE at the time, but now, hindsight being 2020, we know that Jeff Immelt was not good for GE. And I'm sorry, I lost track of your question. Say it again.
It's all good. What I had asked you is where this value around inclusivity comes from, because it doesn't sound like your prior organizations modeled that inclusivity. And what you have said is that you've incorporated the best aspects of the cultures that you've been in, and made it your own and put your own stamp on it.
I would say GE was very good about creating the concept of inclusivity of diverse opinions and ideas. One of the things I did there was Myers-Briggs training, which, psychologists really don't like, but Fortune 500 companies really do like, because it's a very effective way to tailor your message to someone's personality type to make it more palatable for different personality types. And so from that training, we learned about how different people have different perspectives and how important it is to have all those perspectives at the table. Unfortunately, I would say what was missing was the top-down, desire to hear everybody's opinions. And GE was probably better about that than a lot of places. But when I created PlateRate's culture of, creating this egalitarian, every idea is the most important, it was more what I felt was missing from all my cultures. No one really had that. And so I said, that's, yet another reason that I had to create my own company, because I wanted to create that culture. I tried to do it in other organizations, but I could only do it in my group. And even then, it was only when I had the support from management to do it. And so, this concept came out of a little bit of positive stuff that I had learned from, prior cultures like GE. And then also kind of a desire to move forward in a direction that I didn't see other companies doing, that I think is healthier for both the individuals working at the company as well as for the company itself. I think it's really putting ego aside and just taking the best ideas is better for everybody. All it requires is that leadership put aside ego. And so I'm very careful when I recruit people to recruit people who are compassionate, because we all have to be willing to do that. If you get one egotist that tries to dominate the conversation and say my idea is the right idea even when it's not the right idea, it kind of shuts other people up if there's a bully in the room. And so we don't have bullies at PlateRate. We don't allow them, no matter how smart they are, no matter how talented they are. There's no room for a bully in PlateRate.
I love that. And sounds like a very empowering environment and culture that you've created, where people have been given the opportunity to be creative and come up with ideas and let their voices be known and feel comfortable to be their authentic selves, and therefore we hope that it's the best self that's being put forth.
Exactly. In fact, I like to come up with little quotes, and one that I came up with recently is exactly along those lines, which is, power should be used to empower rather than overpower. And it kind of summarizes that instead of using your power to talk over people, you should use your power to empower individuals. And so that's what I think is missing from, leadership in general. And I think there is a new wave of leadership that's coming in that subscribes to that philosophy, but it takes time to make sweeping change. And we want to be a part of that change at PlateRate. And if we get the traction that I think we will be a part of that change.
Very exciting, Garrett. Can't wait to see where you go from here. Let's talk about resiliency, because you're playing in a space where restaurants were hit hard by the pandemic. So talk a bit about resiliency.
Yeah, so resiliency is very important. And I think, your point about restaurants being hit hard is part of why I've been working, 80 to 100-hour weeks since Corona hit, because we are a much less expensive and much better for creating loyalty solution than all of our competitors. So I know that we can save restaurants, businesses, simply by being more generous with them. And because of that, I've been working really hard to get the app ready for restaurants. For me, the resiliency comes from unity. And by being a good partner with our restaurants and actually having a symbiotic growth where we help them grow, they help us grow. And I've created all my business relationships. I can't go into exactly how, but I've created all my business relationships so that it's win-win. If PlateRate makes a lot of money, my restaurants are going to make a lot of money. Everybody that partners with me and the ones that partner with me earlier are going to make more money than the ones that partner with me later. And so, I've created everything so that the incentives are set up that it's a very win-win relationship. So that's what I think creates resiliency, is creating win-win relationships, because then everybody tries their best to make that relationship successful, because they know if it is, they're going to take a part of the winnings of that venture. And so that's really what I'm trying to do, is create resiliency in the food delivery market. It's a space that honestly, like, my competitors charge so much money, they're taking sometimes even more than the restaurant is making an operating margin. The typical restaurant has a 33% operating margin. Some of my competitors charge 35% plus credit card fees, 38%. And so the restaurants, really, I feel bad for them. I think they just don't do the math, or they don't have a finance background. And so they're not realizing that they're actually losing money on every order that goes through my competitors. Now, we come in at a much lower price point and in a much more symbiotic relationship with the restaurant.
It's a fantastic model, and I love how it's holistic and how you've thought about how the whole system community can win.
Yeah. And that's, like, the restaurants, even when, I can't go into all the details, but I'll say, like, as our network gets bigger, the restaurants win from that as well. And so if they help us grow, they grow faster too, and they make more money too.
That is a fantastic model.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Garrett, what would you like people to take away from our conversation today?
I'm a big believer in supporting businesses that are ethical and are helping the community. And so I hope that they see us as one, because, I plan to be a B Corp once I can afford to register as a B Corp, which is a social mission organization. My company's social mission is to help people find their dream job and get a valuable skill set in it, which I've done for dozens of people who came through the company, and I trained them, and then they went on to get full-time roles in that field: computer science, UX, product management. I've trained people in all three of those fields, and QA. And so, I'd like people to see us as the ethical company that we are and want to be a part of that. And they should feel free to reach out if that social mission is something that resonates with them, if they want to learn a new skill set.
That is wonderful, that you have your sights set on being a B Corp and giving back to the communities that you operate in. That's a very important value to me too. So Garrett, you said people should reach out. So how can they find you?
Just go to PlateRate.com/careers, and all of our careers information is listed there. And, they can reach out to me at Garrett@PlateRate.guru, and or Garrett@PlateRate.com. We used to be .guru, now we're .com. I still use the .guru email a lot, but they all go to the same place anyway. So, people can email me directly, or they can reach out to the careers at PlateRate.com, and let us know what they're interested in, and see if there's a way we can help each other. All of our U.S. roles right now are equity based, because we're a bootstrap startup. But we have paid roles for low cost countries, and we have equity-based roles for U.S.-based people, or people are in more expensive countries.
Understood. So I'm going to give those links and ways to connect with you again, which is PlateRate.com/careers. It's Garrett@PlateRate.com or Garrett@PlateRate.guru. You can also look at careers@PlateRate.com. Garrett, I want to thank you for sharing your journey with us and how you've put your own stamp on the culture by being very inclusive and empowering. It's very motivating and inspirational and refreshing. And to our audience, I hope that you are also inspired by Garrett's words of wisdom around surrounding yourself with others who have expertise that you don't have, and always be learning. So to our audience as well, we look forward to the next conversation.